the shadowed streets of California, an unsolved mystery lingers, a cold case, with a dark past that still sends shivers down the spine. Dim streetlights cast fractured shadows over quiet neighborhoods, hiding secrets that daylight can never uncover. Tonight, we delve into the chilling tale of the Zodiac Killer, a name etched into American fear for decades. Cryptic letters, taunting messages to the press, and murders that defied explanation created an ever-present tension, leaving communities on edge. This is not merely a series of crimes, it is a psychological labyrinth, a haunting reflection of human darkness. As we navigate this unsolved mystery, brace yourself for the pervasive dread, the silent manipulation, and the shadows that linger long after the night is past, revealing the unsettling depths of this dark past. Imagine California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Streets stretched beneath dim streetlights, casting flickering shadows that blurred the edges of perception. Fog from the nearby bay crept silently along alleys and empty sidewalks, carrying a chill that lingered even in warm summer nights. Communities appeared calm from a distance, yet subtle unease hummed beneath the surface. Small towns and suburban enclaves felt deceptively safe. Families locked doors a little earlier. Neighbors cast glances over shoulders, and the night seemed to whisper secrets daylight could never reveal. It was in this fragile balance of calm and dread that the Zodiac Killer emerged, transforming ordinary lives into stages for fear. The victims of the Zodiac Killer were ordinary Americans, their lives seemingly ordinary, yet each carried qualities that made them uniquely visible to someone who observed with meticulous intent. David Faraday, just 17, was a high school student with quiet ambition, bright eyes, and a shy demeanor. His days were filled with schoolwork, casual friendships, and dreams of leaving the small town behind for college. Betty Lou Jensen, only 15, embodied youthful innocence and aspiration. Her laughter and teenage anxieties were ordinary, yet these small, human qualities were the canvas upon which horror would later be imposed. Darlene Ferrin, 25, worked at a local bar and was admired for a warmth and spirited personality. She cared deeply for family and friends, often serving as a confidant and anchor for those around her. Each victim had vulnerability, routine, and social presence, and it was these characteristics that the Zodiac Killer studied, mapped, and exploited. Selection was subtle, calculated. Victims were not random, they were observed, their habits noted, and their worlds silently infiltrated. Ordinary lives became a chessboard, and the Zodiac played with the fear and control that his unseen presence allowed. The Zodiac Killer himself remains an enigma. No confirmed photographs exist, and his true identity has never been revealed. Yet letters sent to newspapers, some encrypted in ciphers, provide glimpses of a personality both calculated and compulsively taunting. These communications contained threats, boasts, and cryptic messages designed to create psychological impact beyond the immediate act of violence. Behavioral analysts reconstruct a profile of a narcissistic, socially isolated individual, highly intelligent and ritualistic in behavior. He derived power not just from physical dominance, but from fear, confusion, and the spectacle his actions created. What makes the Zodiac particularly chilling is his consistent, indirect presence. He existed in letters, in cryptograms, and in the spaces surrounding victims' routines. Families felt the weight of constant uncertainty. Communities interpreted ordinary events as possible threats. A stranger passing on the street could be imagined as a predator. Even routine activities, walking home, driving, or meeting friends, were shadowed by unseen observation. Fear extended beyond the moment of crime, infiltrating the daily consciousness of those living under his invisible influence. The environment around these victims amplified tension. Vallejo, Benicia, and neighboring towns appeared safe. Yet quiet streets, family homes, and diners held the potential for terror. Beneath apparent normalcy lay minor secrets, unspoken conflicts, and latent anxieties that created fertile ground for the Zodiac's psychological manipulation. Ordinary spacey schools, parks, and homes became part of a landscape of subtle dread. Communities were unknowing participants, their routines reframed by a killer whose presence was never directly revealed, but profoundly felt. Families reacted in various ways to this intrusion. Some obsessively locked doors, others checked on neighbors, and many allowed suspicion to seep into everyday interactions. Children sensed the tension in adults, and teenagers adjusted routines to avoid potential danger. Even casual observers noted that streets once welcoming now felt ominous. The Zodiac's influence was not confined to direct victims. It extended to the psyche of everyone connected to the environment he infiltrated. Fear became woven into the social fabric, quiet yet pervasive. Even the night itself seemed to participate in the Zodiac Killer's silent theater. Dim, flickering streetlights fractured familiar streets into pools of shadow and light, turning ordinary corners into uncertain spaces. Fog drifted through alleys and between houses, softening shapes and distorting perceptions, as if the environment itself conspired to conceal danger. Simple routines, walking home, driving to a market, or running errands were transformed by an invisible gaze, each step layered with potential threat. The ordinary sounds of night, hum of a car, the rustle of leaves took on an ominous weight. To understand the Zodiac Killer is to recognize that his power extended beyond physical acts. It lay in the subtle manipulation of fear, the psychological disruption he imposed, turning everyday life into a landscape of tension, uncertainty, and silent dread. The victim's human qualities: Faraday's curiosity, Jensen's laughter, Farron's sociabilité, ordinary, yet made them visible to the Zodiac. His unseen presence magnified vulnerability, making every interaction potentially fatal. By observing routines and patterns, he inserted himself into their lives without being physically present. This reflects a mind obsessed with control and perception, reminiscent of Stoic mastery inverted. While Stoicism emphasizes the Zodiac exerted mastery over others' experiences, exploiting uncertainty to amplify his own sense of power. Communities' responses revealed the broader psychological impact. Families, neighbors, and residents scrutinized behaviors, reconstructed minor events, and assessed deviations in routine. Fear became communal, almost ordinary towns transformed into landscapes of suspicion, where a casual smile or unfamiliar vehicle could provoke unease. The Zodiac's influence extended beyond his immediate crimes, embedding a lasting psychological footprint. Finally, it is crucial to remember the humanity behind each name. Faraday, Jensen, and Farron were more than statistics. They embodied community life, personal dreams, and relationships. The contrast between their ordinary existence and the calculated menace of the Zodiac Killer emphasizes both the horror of the acts and the lingering psychological impact. Ordinary streets and homes became arenas of subtle terror, a testament to the silent power of an unseen, meticulous mind. Understanding this world, the people, the streets, the social fabric reveals the eerie efficiency of the Zodiac Killer's presence, where fear and anticipation were as tangible as any physical threat. Before each attack, an eerie calm often settled over the scene, a deceptive lull that masked the chaos soon to come. The victim's final hours appeared ordinary, filled with routine and familiarity, yet subtle anomalies punctuated these moments, signaling a presence that would later become terrifyingly clear. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen spent their late afternoon discussing school, summer plans, and the excitement of approaching weekends. Friends recall casual smiles and laughter that, in hindsight, feel almost tragically ominous. Yet small disturbances as strangers glance across a parking lot, a car idling unusually long, an unexplained phone call introduced unease that no one could fully articulate at the time. These minor disruptions were the Zodiac Killer's signature, interweaving observation and psychological control into moments that would later define terror. For Darlene Farron, evening routines were similarly ordinary yet marked by tension. Witnesses later recalled unfamiliar cars near her home and phone calls that left her anxious, though they seemed insignificant at the moment. These incidents were part of a meticulous design, not mere coincidence. The Zodiac studied patterns, timing, and opportunity with precision. Police reports cataloged each victim's last interactions, revealing tiny details that suggested preparation rather than random chance. His approach was calculated. Every glance, every approach, every intrusion into ordinary moments was meant to unsettle and assert dominance, all without immediate detection. The attacks themselves occurred in fleeting seconds, each moment framed by time, place, and the quiet of the night. Faraday and Jensen were assaulted on December 20th, 1968. At approximately 11:15 p.m., their car parked along the isolated roadway near Lake Herman. The late-night stillness amplified isolation. Fog rolled over hills and streets, and distant engines hummed as a reminder of life continuing elsewhere. Darlene, Farron, and Michael Mageau were attacked on July 4th, 1969, around 10:30 p.m. at a lover's lane near Blue Rock Springs. The calm before these incidents heightened suspense, the silent pause of ordinary reality before the intrusion of violence. In each instance, the environment itself became part of the killer's orchestration, a stage 4, unseen manipulation. Immediately after the attacks, confusion and subtle irregularities defined the responses. Faraday and Jensen were discovered early the following morning by passersby, initiating the first investigation. Farron survived long enough for Mageau to provide testimony, though details remained fragmented. Police documented anomalies in each case, missing evidence, displaced items, and behaviors from locals that ranged from panicked to oddly indifferent. Even small contradictions in witness accounts became critical points for investigators, highlighting the interplay between perception, fear, and reality that the Zodiac so carefully manipulated. The Zodiac's reach extended beyond the immediate crimes. Witnesses reported individuals observing from tree lines or cars that appeared and disappeared without explanation. These fleeting, unverified observations fueled community anxiety, embedding a psychological tension that lingered longer than the acts themselves. The uncertainty created a pervasive sense of instability. Life continued, but under an invisible pressure. Daily routines were suspended, replaced with caution, vigilance, and unease, ensuring that the psychological impact of the crimes extended well beyond physical harm. The Zodiac further manipulated perception through indirect communication. Letters sent to the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and other publications arrived days or weeks after attacks, containing cryptic ciphers, threats, and taunts. One notable message, the 408-symbol cipher, remained largely unsolved for decades, challenging law enforcement and the public alike. These communications reignited fear, sustaining public engagement and anxiety long after the physical events. They were psychological punctuation marks, reinforcing suspense and demonstrating the killer's obsession with control over perception, timing, and narrative. Yet the timeline itself was never linear or complete. Contradictions emerged between witness accounts and police logs, and identities of individuals near crime scenes remained uncertain. Surveillance footage was sparse, inapparative, or unclear, leaving gaps that could never be conclusively explained. These missing pieces became as critical as the known facts, allowing the Zodiac to manipulate narrative and perception. Minor inconsistencies, reports of cars or shadows that could not be verified, how his early observation could be skewed and memories influence, and how the killer thrived in ambiguity. Even small deviations were significant. Witnesses recalled hearing engines at conflicting times or seeing shadows that were later retracted. These discrepancies, though minor, compounded the complexity of the timeline, showing the Zodiac's capacity to dominate perception as effectively as he dominated the physical environment. Terror arose not only from the acts themselves, but from the space between actions, the gaps, and the unresolved questions that left both community and investigators disoriented. As investigations unfolded, the community adapted in response to the unknown threat. Evening walks shortened, couples avoided familiar locations, and parents became increasingly protective. The timeline of terror extended beyond documented attacks into daily life, embedding a culture of hyper-awareness and psychological tension. Every deviation from routine, every suspicious sighting, became a thread in the ongoing narrative of fear. The Zodiac's influence was measured not only in victims, but in altered rhythms of ordinary existence, a shadow that infiltrated consciousness long after each event. Perhaps the most striking element of this chronology is the subtle twists embedded in timing and perception. Reports of suspicious individuals frequently ended with vanished subjects or conflicting accounts, creating doubt and uncertainty. Cameras were often offline or failed to capture decisive moments. Witness statements contradicted evidence, and each gap amplified confusion. Through these manipulations, the Zodiac did not merely commit crimes. He orchestrated an enduring psychological puzzle, one that defied linear understanding and sustained public fear over time. Ultimately, Examining this timeline reveals the Zodiac Killer's deliberate psychological strategy. The selection of victims, the timing of attacks, the use of letters and ciphers, and the orchestration of ambiguity all point to a mind attuned to fear, control, and perception. Each seemingly minor detail, from a final conversation to the discovery of a crime scene, contributed to an architecture of terror. The timeline is more than a series of events. It reveals a deliberate psychological strategy, highlighting victims' vulnerability and the killer's covert, compulsive control. The initial investigation into the Zodiac killings was thorough, yet constrained by limitations of time, technology, and human perception. Police in Vallejo, Banicia, and surrounding towns meticulously documented crime scenes, collecting footprints, fragments, and other traces of evidence. Still, crucial details often eluded them. Witness accounts were inconsistent, key items vanished or were overlooked, and the forensic tools of the era could not always preserve or interpret subtle clues. Each misstep deepened the enigma of the Zodiac Killer, a figure who operated just beyond reach, leaving questions that haunted both investigators and the public alike. Suspects were interrogated and profiles assembled, yet no arrests yielded definitive closure. Behavioral analysts studied letters, cryptic ciphers, and taunting communications, seeking patterns of thought and motive. These correspondences revealed a mind meticulous, cunning, and perversely theatrical, one that derived power not from brute force alone but from manipulating perception itself. Investigators faced a dual challenge: evidence of violent acts and the psychological orchestration underlying them. Every inquiry became as much a study in human cognition and fear as a pursuit of forensic facts. The media intensified the fear surrounding the Zodiac killings. Newspapers sensationalized each incident, publishing his letters with minimal analysis, forcing the public to confront the killer's cryptic messages directly. Headlines speculated endlessly on motives, methods, and potential suspects, while families' private grief was exposed to widespread scrutiny. Communities dissected every report, searching for hidden clues or subtle warnings, heightening collective anxiety. The Zodiac's communications became more than correspondence. They were tools of psychological manipulation, transforming local tragedies into a national spectacle. Through the press, his influence extended far beyond immediate victims, embedding fear deeply into the consciousness of an entire region. Public reaction was intense and pervasive. Residents spoke cautiously of strangers in neighborhoods, of cars idling at odd hours, and shadows glimpsed in peripheral vision. Fear extended beyond direct victims, reaching anyone who recognized the fragility of daily routine. Casual interactions, friendly gestures, and ordinary encounters were reinterpreted as potential threats. Social trust eroded under the weight of anticipation and suspicion. The Zodiac achieved something rare: dominion over community psyche without ever appearing in person. Several theories emerged to explain the murders, each offering different lenses for interpretation. Hypotheses that suggested personal motives, grudges, jealousies, or vendettas driving selection. In this view, each act had twisted logic rooted in emotion. Hypothesis B proposed: deception, staged or orchestrated crimes intended to mislead investigators, magnifying confusion and frustration. Hypothesis C considered an unexpected third party, operating outside immediate social circles yet acting with precise intent. Each theory, plausible alone, collided with evidence, creating a labyrinth of conjecture. Investigators and the public faced persistent questions without clear answers. Which theory held the most weight? Could a personal grudge explain seemingly random victims? Or was the meticulous orchestration a sign of deeper psychological pathology? Some clues appeared deliberate misdirection, so skillfully applied that even those close to the crime could not perceive the truth. The act of questioning became part of the narrative, an invitation into the Zodiac's carefully cultivated uncertainty. Media and investigation intersected in revealing ways. Reporters offered interpretations sometimes at odds with official findings, pressuring law enforcement. Families faced scrutiny and speculation about character or behavior. Communities participated unwittingly, their observations both helpful and misleading. The Zodiac's terror transcended physical violence, affecting perceptions, behavior, and communal thought. Fear itself became a tool, shaping how society responded. and how the narrative unfolded. New evidence often confounded expectations. Fingerprints, contradicted witness accounts, postmarked letters introduced timeline inconsistencies, and previously ignored clues resurfaced with advancing forensic techniques. Each revelation forced investigators, experts, and the public to reevaluate prior assumptions. The Zodiac's indirect control extended beyond acts of violence into manipulation of information, maintaining a prolonged state of uncertainty. Behavioral profiling became central. Analysts studied patterns in victim selection, letters, ciphers, geography, and timing. The Zodiac craved recognition without confrontation, engaging in a macabre dialogue with authorities and the media. Letters served as both evidence and performance, asserting power while remaining intangible and anonymous. Investigators pursued not only physical clues, but a deeper understanding of perception, fear, and cognition. Public vigilance shaped the investigation itself. Citizens called in tips some accurate, mani mistaken, adding clarity and confusion. Ordinary activities were scrutinized. Parents monitored children, teenagers altered routines, and casual social interactions became suspect. The Zodiac's influence extended into the collective consciousness, transforming psychological landscapes into territories of tension. The case's timeline measured not only hours and dates, but waves of anxiety across communities. New discoveries continually disrupted assumptions. Cryptograms resisted interpretation. Witness statements conflicted with prior records, and forgotten details were re-examined using modern methods. Each development reopened debates, questioning previous theories, highlighting the fragility of certainty. The Zodiac's methodology encompassed both physical and psychological disruption, manipulating the flow of information to sustain engagement and unease. By the late 1970s, the investigation encompassed a complex web of evidence, testimony, and public speculation. No arrests had been made. The convergence of media amplification, community response, and investigative work created a layered psychological landscape. Each element contributed to understanding the killer's profile, yet maintained the case's unresolved nature. The Zodiac's influence reached beyond immediate victims into the social fabric itself. Ultimately, the Zodiac investigation and the public's reaction reveal a profound study of human cognition under extreme stress, the delicate balance between logic and speculation, grief and curiosity, fear and rational thought shows just how malleable perception can become when confronted with the unknown. Though physically absent, the Zodiac skillfully orchestrated this dynamic, leveraging letters, cryptic messages, witness accounts, and media coverage to shape behavior, thought, and collective attention. Every piece of evidence, every newspaper report, every public observation was woven into an ongoing tension, deliberately sustained to provoke uncertainty and anxiety. The result was not just terror over physical acts, but a nationwide psychological disruption. Communities, law enforcement, and individuals were drawn into a complex, shifting narrative, revealing the killer's cunning intellect and the profound, enduring impact of fear, leaving society grappling with questions that remain unresolved even decades later. To understand the Zodiac Killer is to confront a mind both elusive and meticulously structured. Behavioral patterns suggest a person who operated with extraordinary self-control, masking impulses beneath calculated actions. The letters, often cryptic and taunting, reveal a compulsion to manipulate perception and maintain a psychological grip over both investigators and the public. While Stoic philosophy emphasizes mastery over emotion and reasoned restraint, the Zodiac's behavior demonstrates a twisted inversion. A mastery over others' perception while surrendering entirely to dark impulses. This duality, discipline over appearance, chaos within, defines the psychological tension that shaped his actions. His communication was not simply a confession. It was a performance, a careful orchestration designed to assert control without exposure. Trauma and social alienation likely informed the Zodiac's compulsions. Analysts speculate that early experiences, unreported grievances, or perceived slights could have fostered a sense of superiority and disconnection from societal norms. The careful selection of victims, the timing of attacks, and the post-crime communications suggest someone deeply attuned to vulnerability, capable of both patience and precision. This person seems to have approached life as a series of calculations, measuring opportunity and risk, while deriving gratification from the uncertainty and fear imposed on others. In essence, the crimes reflect a mind attempting to assert dominance over a world it simultaneously rejected and feared. The repetition of certain behaviors reveals a psychological ritual. Returning to letters, ciphers, and patterns of taunting suggests compulsive needs beyond mere killing. These rituals served multiple purposes: establishing a sense of identity, maintaining power over public perception, and creating a narrative of fear. Through this lens, the Zodiac is less a random killer than a practitioner of psychological architecture, constructing scenarios in which terror, uncertainty, and fascination coexisted. Each action, each letter, and each cryptogram were instruments in a broader strategy of control and invisibility. Since the case remains officially unsolved, contemporary analysis demands fresh investigative perspectives. Minor, overlooked details, such as unusual witness observations, discrepancies in timing, or patterns in letters could provide new leads. Behavioral analysis may focus on geographic profiling, communication patterns, or potential social triggers that align with the Zodiac's observed behaviors. By integrating modern forensic tools with psychological assessment, investigators could reconstruct likely scenarios and identify individuals previously outside the scope of suspicion. Each unexplored angle offers the potential to illuminate facets of the killer, as behavior that remain hidden in historical ambiguity. A critical lens for this exploration is philosophical reflection. Stoicism, for example, emphasizes rationality and mastery over internal impulses. The Zodiac's actions provide a counterpoint, an individual whose inner chaos was projected outward, creating fear and confusion in a society that sought reason and order. By juxtaposing philosophical ideals with the realities of violent, compulsive behavior, we gain insight into the extreme divergence between potential moral reasoning and psychological pathology. It prompts reflection. How might early environmental, social, or cognitive factors shape the capacity for harm in silence, without confrontation or confession? The question arises: why does a mind turn so destructive while remaining largely invisible? Why does calculated cruelty replace open expression? And why does manipulation of perception become a primary tool of influence? The Zodiac Killer's crimes exemplify the chilling potential of silent malevolence of violence that operates in shadows, not only in physical acts, but in the subtle orchestration of fear. The philosophical implication is profound. Morality and ethics can exist conceptually, but the human psyche is capable of private subversions that challenge communal understanding and predictability. Each unsolved act invites contemplation not only of the perpetrator but of society, as vulnerability to the unseen and unacknowledged. Moreover, the Zodiac Killer's psychological profile underscores the interplay between identity and anonymity. By remaining unrecognized, he exerted influence that transcended physical presence. Letters published in newspapers, cryptic messages sent to local authorities, and taunts delivered publicly created a tension between visibility and invisibility. This duality amplified fear while preventing closure. Communities experienced uncertainty. Families endured prolonged anxiety, and investigators confronted the limits of perception and understanding. The Zodiac's manipulation of social awareness demonstrates the potency of an intellect that is disciplined yet morally untethered, capable of crafting terror through information alone. Potential avenues for renewed investigation hinge upon the observation of behavioral anomalies, patterns that may have seemed coincidental choice of victim, timing of letters, geographic movement could revealed psychological consistency and predictability. Cross-referencing these elements with contemporary data analytics, forensic genealogy, and modern investigative technology may illuminate the character behind the cipher. While the killer's identity remains hidden, understanding the underlying psychological architecture can inform investigative hypotheses, refine behavioral predictions, and provide context for the enigma that has persisted for decades. The ethical and philosophical dimensions of this case are as compelling as the crimes themselves. Observers are confronted with fundamental questions about human nature. How much of behavior is dictated by circumstance, trauma, or deliberate calculation. How can a society interpret or intervene when destruction is projected silently, without overt signals of intent? The Zodiac Killer exemplifies the intersection of morality, psychology, and philosophy, a figure whose existence prompts reflection on the capacity for hidden malevolence in ordinary human beings. By studying the patterns, letters, and psychological cues, we confront the paradox of the human mind, capable of reason, yet equally capable of deliberate, silent cruelty. Finally, the enduring fear and mystery underscore the societal impact of unresolved crimes. Even decades later, communities continue to grapple with uncertainty. The unknown perpetrator casts a long psychological shadow, reminding us that unresolved acts of violence affect not only direct victims, but collective consciousness. Listeners are invited to consider the implications. The interplay of fear, perception, and morality, the fragility of ordinary routines under unseen threat, and the profound questions about the human capacity for darkness. Examining the Zodiac Killer goes beyond recounting crimes. It forces us to confront the limits of empathy, the fragility of morality, and the challenges of truly understanding human behavior. Each action, each taunt, tests our capacity to comprehend darkness while reflecting on our own perceptions, fears, and ethical boundaries. Reflecting on the Zodiac Killer reminds us that fear often reflects our own vulnerabilities. The unsolved nature of these crimes leaves a lingering echo, a quiet warning about the hidden depths of human behavior and the fragility of trust in society. Each unanswered question challenges us to consider morality, perception, and the intricate complexities of the human mind. Though the killer's identity and motives may remain unknown, the lessons endure. Vigilance, empathy, and awareness of unseen darkness are crucial. The story compels us to examine not only the criminal acts but also our own responses to fear and uncertainty. If this exploration captivated you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to support continued deep dives into true crime psychology. Some crimes leave no screams, only questions, and some silences echo louder than any confession. Thank you for listening to Criminal Mind.